Let me tell you about Lila Grant, 41 years old. Co-founder and chief operating officer of Grant Mercer Partners, a regional commercial real estate firm in North Carolina that managed industrial leases, medical office portfolios, and mixed-use developments for institutional clients. Lila built the company with her husband, Evan Grant, for 14 years. Not in the supportive spouse sense. In the legal, operational, foundational sense. Lila negotiated the first property purchase. She built the underwriting model. She handled lender relationships. She built the lease compliance system that kept their investors calm when markets got loud. She ran payroll. She managed the property managers. She handled the tenant issues no one wanted to touch. Evan was the front. The charm, the dinners. The handshake guy. Lila was the engine. And one Monday evening in September, Evan sat across from her at the kitchen table and told her he wanted a divorce. He said he had already spoken to an attorney. He said he had already made plans. He said he wanted to be fair. He said he was in love with his assistant. He did not say her name because Evan was still trying to keep the conversation clean enough to believe he was the good guy. Lila listened without interrupting. Then she asked one question. Have you read Clause 7? Evan blinked. He said he did not know what she meant. Lila nodded once, slow. Because that told her everything. Evan had filed for divorce to begin a new life. He had not read the partnership agreement that decided what his new life would cost. Clause 7 was in the partnership agreement, written in year 2, signed by both founders, reviewed by independent counsel, filed and unchanged for 12 years. Clause 7 said that if either founding partner initiated a divorce, the initiating partner would be required to sell their entire ownership stake in the business to the non-initiating partner at book value, not market value, within 60 days of filing. It also said the family home, purchased using business proceeds and held in the partnership trust, would transfer to the non-initiating partner upon filing. Evan filed on Tuesday morning. By Wednesday afternoon, his attorney had discovered Clause 7, and Evan learned that fair was not a feeling. Fair was a paragraph. This is the story of how a husband filed for divorce to marry his assistant, and Clause 7 forced him to sell his half of the business at book value and walk away from the house as well. Buckle up, because this twist was written when they still liked each other. And it still worked when they did not. The story starts in year 2. Grant Mercer Partners was still small then. 3 properties. 2 lenders who tolerated them. 1 institutional investor who liked them enough to keep wiring money. Lila and Evan were newly married and newly ambitious. They assumed it would always be a shared dream. Lila did not because she was pessimistic. Because she had watched 2 firms in their network collapse after divorces. She had watched partners fight over valuation, fight over control, and burn the company down in the middle of an investor reporting cycle. She had watched clients leave because nobody wants to sign a lease with a company whose owners are at war. Lila decided that if her marriage ever failed, the company would not fail with it. So she called a commercial attorney named Frances Cole and asked her to draft a clause for the partnership agreement. Frances asked Lila what she wanted it to do. Lila said 3 things. The business needs to keep running without a valuation war. The person who initiates the divorce should bear the financial consequence of that decision. The house purchased with business proceeds should remain with the partner who did not initiate the break. Frances told her that could be done. It would need to be explicit. It would need to be signed with independent counsel on both sides. And it would need to be drafted tightly enough that nobody could pretend it was unclear later. Lila said to draft it. Clause 7 was drafted in plain language. Initiating party sells their stake to the non-initiating party at book value within 60 days. Book value was defined as the value shown on the most recent audited balance sheet, adjusted for known liabilities, using the accounting method they already used for lender reporting. The home was owned by the partnership trust, not by either spouse directly, and the trust language referenced Clause 7 as the trigger for transfer. Evan read it back then. He laughed and said they would never need it. Lila said she hoped he was right. Evan signed anyway. They both signed. Independent attorneys reviewed it. They filed it. Then they built the company for 12 more years and never spoke about Clause 7 again. Until the Monday evening Evan wanted a divorce. Evan tried to keep the kitchen table conversation simple. He said it was not about money. He said it was about happiness. He said he wanted to handle it respectfully. He said they could split everything evenly. He said his attorney would make it easy. Lila asked him again calmly. Have you read Clause 7? Evan said he had not looked at the partnership agreement in years. Lila nodded. She stood up. She said she would not argue tonight. She said she would talk to her attorney. Then she walked into her home office, opened the fireproof box, and took out the partnership agreement. She simply confirmed that Clause 7 was still there. Page 9, unchanged. Then she called her attorney. Her attorney was Rachel Kim, a business litigation and partnership dissolution specialist. Rachel answered on the second ring. Lila said 3 sentences. Evan is filing for divorce. He is leaving to marry his assistant. Clause 7 is about to matter. Rachel paused and said 1 sentence. Send me the agreement tonight. Lila sent it. Rachel called back in 20 minutes. It is enforceable, Rachel said. It is clear. It is signed. It is structured as a buy-sell provision inside the partnership agreement, not a punishment clause, and the trust language on the house is tied to it. Lila asked what she should do. Rachel said to do nothing until Evan filed. Let him trigger it. The next morning Evan filed. He did it early, like someone who believes speed equals control. By lunch, his attorney Mark Delaney emailed Rachel. Mark wrote that Evan wanted an amicable separation and an equitable division of assets including the business. Rachel replied with 1 attachment and 1 sentence. Please review Clause 7. Mark called 2 hours later. Mark said Clause 7 was unusual. Rachel said unusual does not mean unenforceable. Mark said book value was unfair. Rachel said book value was the valuation method Evan signed 12 years ago when the company was small and the clause was easy to ignore. Mark said they might challenge it. Rachel said they could file anything they wanted, but the language was clean, the process was correct, and the clock was already running. 60 days. Evan did not take the news well. He called Lila that night. He said there had to be a mistake. He said no judge would enforce it. He said it was punitive. Lila let him speak. Then she said 1 sentence. You signed it, and she ended the call. The next day Evan arrived at the office early. He walked into Lila's office without knocking. He said they should find a middle ground. He said he would give her more than book value if she agreed to keep things private. Lila told him she had no interest in humiliating him. She had an interest in protecting what she built. If he wanted a middle ground, he could stop trying to renegotiate a document he signed. Evan stared at her and said she had planned this. Lila said no, she had prepared for it. There is a difference. Evan went back to his attorney and tried to fight. Mark filed 3 arguments. First, Clause 7 was unconscionable because book value was far below market value. Rachel responded with the independent counsel record, the years of unchanged terms, and the fact that this was a negotiated buy-sell mechanism that protected business continuity. Second, the house transfer was an unenforceable penalty. Rachel responded with the partnership trust structure and the acquisition documentation, showing the home was purchased using partnership proceeds and had been held in trust continuously. Third, Evan claimed he did not understand the implications. Rachel responded with the email chain from year 2 where Evan had asked Francis Cole a question about the clause, received an explanation, and replied that he understood, in writing. The arguments collapsed in a week. Then Mark called Rachel and asked what settlement looked like. Rachel said settlement looked like Clause 7, book value be out within 60 days. House transfer per trust. The only negotiable element was the payment schedule as long as it met the deadline and was secured properly. Evan asked for the numbers. Grant Mercer Partners had been valued informally in the market at around $15 million based on his portfolio and fee stream. Evan assumed that meant he would walk away with around $7 million. Book value was different. Book value based on the most recent audited balance sheet was $3.2 million for the entire firm, which meant Evan's half was $1.6 million. The house valued at $2.3 million transferred to Lila under the trust provision. Evan did the math and went silent. The closing happened on day 57. Evan signed the transfer of his ownership interest to Lila. He received $1.6 million. Lila paid it through retained earnings and a lender line she had already arranged. The house transfer was processed through the trust the same week. Evan moved into an apartment. His assistant, Brooke, resigned from the firm 2 days later. Lila accepted the resignation and reassigned the workload. No speech, no public humiliation. Because Lila was not trying to win socially, she was trying to keep the company stable. Within 60 days, Lila hired a new head of acquisitions, a woman named Priya Nair. Lila gave her a binder. Every active relationship, every pipeline deal, every investor preference, every lender covenant. Priya said she had never seen onboarding this clean. Lila said she had been building the binder for years. The firm did not collapse. The investors stayed. The lenders stayed. The tenants did not notice the difference. Revenue increased 12% the following year because Lila stopped wasting energy managing a partnership that was already dead. Evan tried to start a new firm. He discovered that most of the relationships he thought were his belonged to the company. And the company belonged to Lila. Brooke did not stay with him long. Evan had mistaken excitement for loyalty. Lila had built loyalty the hard way over years by being consistent. 2 years later, Lila kept one document in the fireproof box. Clause 7, page 9. The paragraph that made the business survivable when the marriage was not. And that, my friends, is how a husband filed for divorce to marry his assistant and learned that the most expensive decision he made was filing first. Because Clause 7 did not punish him for wanting a different life. It simply made him pay the cost of breaking the partnership he helped build. At book value. Exactly as he agreed. If this story hit your justice receptors, subscribe to Tangled Stories, drop a like, and share this with anyone who is building something with someone they trust and assumes trust will be enough. Because here, every story has a twist. And sometimes that twist is written in year 2, signed in good faith, and triggered in year 14. I am Brett, and I will see you in the next one.